Today I found this gaming PC on Facebook Marketplace for $100. My plan is to flip this system, but I also want to gift the graphics card, if it works, to a friend. But the system isn't working. Let's start by taking the system apart and testing the components. The first thing I like to test is the power supply and the SSD. These are easy to test outside of the system. Then remove the graphics card and use a known working one. I also remove the motherboard and parts to test it out of the case. Before I do anything else though, I need to ground myself. I'm not taking any chances with electrostatic discharge damage. I'm working on carpet, so this is a must. My small desk space is where all of my parts will sit. Now I can remove the power supply. It's a Corsair CX 500 watt unit. While I take the power supply out, let's talk about the rest of the parts in this system. It has a Core i7-3770K, 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM, a 512GB SanDisk SSD, and an XFX RX 580 8GB graphics card. I'm very hopeful the entire system is working. I'll have to remove the power supply the rest of the way off camera. It's difficult to do with one hand. I also removed the SanDisk SSD, which we'll see is a 512GB model. It looks brand new. While I'm at it, I'll remove the graphics card as well. This is a big chunk boy, very beefy looking. And everything looks good. No damage to the gold contacts. No damage to the HDMI and display ports. Power connector looks good as well. Just set that down gently. Looking back into the case, I noticed something. It looks like some of the front panel headers are backwards. They are in the correct spots, but they do have positive and negative ends. It looks as some are backward. The front panel headers are responsible for the power button and such. We'll come back to this later though. Either way, let's test the power supply. I'm using a Thermaltake power supply tester. I'll have to hook up the power supply to the tester and plug it into the wall. It will let me know if any rails aren't providing the proper voltage with red markings. If everything is all blue and the voltages are correct, then it's healthy. Press the power button, and that's it. All is good to go. Let's test the SATA SSD next. I need to look at it externally by connecting it to my laptop with an external adapter. Blue light. We're good to plug in the SATA SSD. Alright, now I'll log into my computer and take a look. Okay, don't look at me type my password in. Okay, now we go to disk management to see if the drive is recognized and working. There it is. It doesn't have a value, but it's initialized. That's all we need to know. Before I test the rest of the parts out of the system, I'm going to see if the CMOS batteries are any good. I can use a multimeter set to 20 volts to check their voltage. It should be 3.5 volts or so. It looks like this one's a little weak. Definitely going to replace this battery. I also want to ID the motherboard and make sure the CPU is actually compatible. The seller said he wasn't 100% sure and could be part of the issue. Easy way to tell this is to look up online what CPUs this particular motherboard model number support. It's an Intel desktop board with the model number DQ77MK. A quick Google search reveals that in fact this motherboard supports this CPU. Okay, I took the board out of the case with the front panel headers still attached. As I thought, some of the connectors are on backwards. It's kind of hard to make out, but that is in fact the problem. Something could still be wrong, so let's test the CPU, RAM, and motherboard out of the case. I have a spare cheap graphics card that I know works to help me test it, and I'll put the cooler and power supply back together. We have power. I'll have to short the power button header with my screwdriver to turn on the system, and it works! Having a display output means most of the system is working. I did forget a keyboard, so I can't boot into the BIOS. Okay, let's try that again. And sweet, she's alive. And here's our CPU, the Core i7 3770K, and our RAM. We're good to go, folks. Now let's see if the graphics card works. Here we go. Fans are spinning, and yes! Score! The system is fully working. After a fresh Windows install, this thing will be ready to sell. But that's not all. This morning, after I put most of the system back together, I found a monitor fully working out by the dumpster. It'll pair great with the system once the GTX 1050 Ti comes in. I ordered it specifically for this system, as I'm giving the RX 580 to a friend. The monitor is an Acer 1080p 60Hz 5 millisecond response time panel. Nothing amazing, but it'll pair nicely. Now let's see what this system can do.
Computer just gets a lot slower when there's more people in a server, so I tend to just stick in the low servers.